Have you heard of the Hong Kong 47? This is a group of 47 people, activists, legislators, even professors. Since 2014, they have led a pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. These were public faces, protesting on the streets, resisting Beijing's crackdown on the city of Hong Kong. 47 people. Today, 45 of them were sentenced to prison. They were found guilty of plotting to overthrow the government. The jail terms range from 4 to 10 years. This is Hong Kong's biggest national security case.
I think different people may have different judgment about whether sentencing is appropriate. But I think the important point is the rule of law. If anyone commit offense, be it national security offense or other offenses, there is sufficient evidence and then we will prosecute.
So what led to this? Are the pro-democracy protests a thing of the past now? And does this mark the slow death of Hong Kong? To answer this, let's look at history. Hong Kong was a British colony for more than 150 years. In the year 1997, the UK returned Hong Kong to China. And back then, Beijing made a promise that Hong Kong would get 50 years of autonomy. 1997, they promised 50 years of autonomy. They said Hong Kong could keep their capitalism and democracy. It was called one country, two systems. But then China went back on its word. In 2014, Beijing issued a new diktat. They said Hong Kong could still choose its leaders, but with a caveat. The people of Hong Kong could select only from a list of pre-approved candidates. Candidates approved by China, only those candidates could be elected. The people of Hong Kong rejected this move. They demanded free elections. Tens of thousands gathered on the streets. They came armed with umbrellas. Umbrellas were meant to protect themselves from the tear gas and pepper spray that was being used by the police. And this earned the protests a new name. It was called the Umbrella Movement. It lasted for about 79 days. It exposed China's true intentions. Things settled down for a bit after that. In 2019, Beijing struck again. It framed a new law for Hong Kong, a national security law, which called for strict punishment for anything anti-China. Activists could be extradited to Beijing, election candidates could be banned, and critical media could be raided. So the protesters returned to the streets, more than 1 million of them. They began with peaceful marches, but soon things spun out of control. Protesters were shot at. There was widespread vandalism and clashes with the security forces. Hong Kong was on the edge. China called it terrorism. And unlike 2014, this time in 2019, China did not step back. It cracked down, and this crackdown was brutal. 1 year later, Beijing passed the law, the final nail in Hong Kong's democracy coffin, the national security law. Politicians were arrested, so were activists. Many fled the country seeking asylum in the West. Hong Kong banned protest anthems. Any act of dissent was met with strict punishment, and today's trial sums it up. Excessive punishment to set a precedent.
Regarding today's ruling, I would not say it is too little or too much, because today's sentencing, for the 600,000 people who took part in the primary election, for the 2 million people who participated in the anti-extradition movement, today's sentencing is already suppression.
This trial marks the slow death of Hong Kong. The city has changed since 2019, and it has changed for the worse. In September, a man was sentenced to 14 months in jail. Do you know why? What was his crime? Wearing a T-shirt with a protest slogan. 14 months in jail. Hong Kong is also installing thousands of surveillance cameras, ostensibly to fight crime, but actually to snoop on people. Hong Kong is now a mini China. Their government behaves like Beijing's spy state. But Hong Kongers still do not identify as Chinese. Look at this survey. In 2009, nearly 38% called themselves Chinese. 2009. Then in 2019, that number fell to 11%. There's a rise in anti-China sentiment. Until some time back, there were open calls for Hong Kong's independence in some quarters, but now it seems like a pipe dream. In the early 2000s, Hong Kong was free. Of course, it was still part of China. At the same time, it had a distinct culture, a distinct system. Money flowed into the city. Surveillance was low. There was freedom to protest. And Beijing was not breathing down their neck. All of that changed in 2019. So where does this leave Hong Kong? The city once symbolized freedom, prosperity and resilience. Today it stands as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly liberties can be lost. With Beijing's grip tightening, its future looks uncertain.